what is clearly the information that shows that the waited for Bitcoin wealth transfer has initiated. It has begun. It has started. It has commenced. It is on the way. Now, you can of course say, well, this has happened from the very beginning, from the very inception of Bitcoin. Yes, you can. However, the actual wealth transfer that we're talking about is the transfer of wealth from the people who held Bitcoin for quite a long time to the people who are now getting into it at what for them are low and relatively low risk prices. Right, or I should say that are low risk and relatively low prices. As explained before, the fact that all these big banks and financial houses are getting into Bitcoin now is evident that they consider it to be relatively low risk, because these are organizations that tend not to do extremely high risk things when it comes to hedging the future of their wealth, right, or the potential future of their wealth, with an asset that costs them, some billions of dollars out of the hundreds of billions or even trillions that they have or manage. And you can say, well, why didn't they buy it sooner? They would have made a lot more money. They'd already be massively in the green. Yes, well, part of that is because they didn't necessarily believe that it would take off and be maintained and sustained as well as it has. Partly it was because of the size of the network, which is growing, right? And they wanted to make sure that there were enough people interested in this that would actually be willing to pay top dollar in order to buy it at a premium from them once they begin selling it. And they obviously began selling derivatives of it, known as ETFs, right? Paper versions of Bitcoin. Right? They're not selling the actual underlying, they're selling a paper document or an electronic document that says you own the right to claim this much Bitcoin or equivalent when you cash out. And most people cash out in dollars, so they don't actually get the Bitcoin. So the house gets to keep their Bitcoin and sell that ETF over and over again, just like a bank does when they take your dollar and they loan it out 99 times. Right? So for every dollar you put in the bank gets to use it as if it's $99. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you like to have $99 for every dollar that you have? Right? So if you have $100, you've got $10,000, or 9,900 bucks. Just think about that, right? But that's what banks effectively do, and that's what big banks and big financial institutions that are selling Bitcoin ETFs are also doing, right? They can oversell by a lot because they know most people are going to cash out if and when they do in dollars. And frankly, a lot of people just buy and hold and they don't sell, right? And maybe when they die, they pass it on to their heirs, or it gets cashed out because they pass away. So their position gets closed and their heirs inherit whatever those gains happen to have been over the long term. And generally speaking, markets go up, assets go up over time. So if you're holding something like a Bitcoin ETF, which has a pretty good looking forecast for the long term by all accounts and measures, it's likely to do well if you buy it now and hold it for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and leave it to your offspring, your heirs, to cash it and then do whatever they want to do with it and be grateful that you left them that. Well, that is one aspect of this, right? The wealth transfer has begun. Again, I'll say it again, the ETFs, right, the leading ETFs, the one in the US, have grown from 0 to more than 1 million Bitcoin in 5 months. And in just 5 days of trading, a couple weeks back, in 5 days, they bought more Bitcoin than is mined now every 2 months at a rate of 450 Bitcoin a day. Which means they're buying them from old wallets that have them since a long, or whale wallets that have a lot of Bitcoin and have seen significant enough returns that they're perfectly happy selling them, again, at a premium to these banks who are happy to pay the premium, because even if they're paying a couple percent or 5% or maybe even 10% premiums, they know that Bitcoin's trajectory long term is not to the downside, at least not in the coming years, right? Yes, it could go down. We could even have an 80% drop again. But if you think it's going to drop 80% and not bounce back, you probably have got another thing coming. Now, of course, the VEPs will actually dictate whether or not that ends up being the case. Maybe it will fall. Maybe there'll be no more demand. Highly doubtful. As long as there's demand for a liquid asset that has a limited supply, and the supply is dwindling, and there's high demand for it, and demand is increasing, typically over the long term, even without VEPs, and even without knowing, understanding the VEPs, just understanding basic Econ 101, what every retail trader knows, anyone that's ever gone and taken an econ class knows, high demand, low supply equals higher prices. Does that mean that every second the price goes up? No, of course not. There's going to be pops and drops all along the way. But over time, it will rise in price because the supply is limited and dwindling. It is seen as valuable by people who have all the money. Seen as valuable meaning they see that it has a price that people are willing to pay for it. Whether or not they particularly believe that Bitcoin is all that, like, they really don't care. They're not in it to fix the old money ways. They're in it to protect their wealth going into the future. Right? They don't care about your libertarian views or your socialist views or your freedom views. They don't care about any of that. They care about the money. It's the money, Lebowski. Right? It's always the money. When it comes to banks and financial institutions, even governments, follow the money. That is where you will find the most probable Occam's razor, the most probable reason for seeing what we see on the markets. Occam's razor, however you want to pronounce it, Occam's razor, I guess. Anyway, don't be duped. Realize that this asset is only getting more in demand over time. And we're seeing that literally every day that these banks are trading, Monday through Friday, usually, right? In just a few months' time, after its launch, the Bitcoin ETFs, specifically the BlackRock one, has grown into the single most liquid ETF of all time in 3 months. In 3 months. Think about that. It took them 3 months to create an ETF launched from scratch into the single biggest ETF across all assets, across all markets in the history of ETFs, which go back some decades. 3 months. And you're going to tell me that there isn't demand for this product? No, there's clearly demand for this product. Massive, overwhelming demand. If you think about it, why are people not running around with their heads cut off? Heads are cut off, going crazy. Oh my God, this thing is incredible. This thing is insane. It's growing at insane rates. Well, again, we know the reasons for that. One is most people are docile about this stuff. They don't even know what's going on. They don't even know what Bitcoin is. And even if they know a little bit about it, they have no idea what's going on in the markets. Only 10% or less of the American population owns a single share of anything or has even a penny invested in any market. 90% of Americans don't have a single thing invested. And of course, the people who do have things invested, the ones who are doing well have 6 digits, 7 digits or more, typically. The ones that are not doing so well have anywhere between 0 and 6 digits, which, sure, it's still a pretty nice chunk of change to have $90,000 or 70 or 60 or even $20,000. But, those are not generational wealth, fortune amounts. But they can become that for people who know how to, invest properly and trade properly. So the question is, what should you be doing? Given this information that that shows these assets, and I mean crypto in general, but specifically those that have real value, or Bitcoin and other high quality ones that have a relatively high perceived value and that there is clearly demand for, what should you be doing? Where should you be investing your money? Well, that's entirely up to you. But I can tell you what I see and the way that I look at it. Don't follow my advice. They always say do your own research, but really, you should. You should actually spend time to learn this stuff, because this isn't a joke. We will probably never see this kind of wealth transfer again in our lives, because the entire system is changing. We are seeing the fiat system slowly die. Sure, it'll be replaced by other fiats even, and it'll be replaced by other things that will attempt to stem the tide of the problems that have caused the situation we're in, but they will eventually fail too. And we're slowly seeing the replacement of those things with a more decentralized, or at least, more limited supply value system. So you have limited supplies of various coins, and you have lower inflation of other coins that don't have limited supplies, or whatever you have better systems. You have, better recording, accounting, security, portability, etc., etc. Basically, the world is moving towards crypto. And of course, blockchain and Web3 and all those things. But crypto as the underlying. And that is where I am personally, and have been for many, many years, obviously, I'm placing my future, financial interests increasingly on crypto, because, well, it has proven itself to be worthy for so many years. And I'm glad that I've done that from the beginning. And I'm glad that I continue to do that to this day, because I see that the long-term trajectory is quite clear. That the assets in the crypto sphere are set for long-term growth insofar as the good assets go. Not all the assets. Yes, most of them are garbage. Like most of them, really. Most of them are pure garbage. But if they're even making an attempt to be something better than what we have currently, that's already a nobler ambition. And even if they are garbage still, they will eventually go the way of the dodo. Right? And the best ones will remain standing, and there will always be new ones and competitors and all that, because that's human nature. And that's a good thing. The more competitors we see, the more we see we have a thriving market, right? The more demand there is to justify having more competitors, the more of a thriving market there is, and that's good for crypto. And that's one of the reasons that I'm looking forward to seeing crypto grow as an asset class. And I think it will, based on all the information that I see about it in the macro. And of course, looking at it technically from the level of the VEPs, which really tells you with a very strong indication exactly where the market's going on any lower time frame, especially those that are tradable. And from an investment point of view also, my personal opinion is that this asset class is set to grow. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the wealthiest hands in the world buying as much of it as they can. Just think about that. So, get it while it's cheap is what I'm doing. I don't know about you guys, and that's up to you. Personally, the lower it goes, the more I can get cheaper. But even at this current price, which seems expensive compared to the history of the coins, it's still relatively cheap, and there's a lot of coins that are pretty cheap, and I like certain ones of them. I won't go over them in this video. I'll just say happy trading and happy cryptoing. Cheers.